Everyone in the room laughed at the barefoot boy who dared to sit at the VIP table. They saw only a poor orphan, not knowing that the man who owned the hall was about to call him, "My son." This is a story of mockery, destiny, and a twist no one saw coming. Watch till the end, because sometimes, the seat people laugh at is the one heaven has reserved for greatness. The chandeliers above the Eco Grand Hotel glistened like frozen stars, casting golden light on velvet tablecloths and crystal glasses. Waiters in white gloves moved gracefully between the tables, placing golden plates, wine glasses, and folded napkins shaped like crowns. Every chair at the VIP table was meant for someone important. Someone rich. Someone powerful. But that night, a barefoot boy sat on one of those chairs. His name was Kenechi. His trousers were a little too short, his shirt faded and slightly torn. But he sat there quietly, with his little hands folded on the edge of the table like a guest who didn't know how to breathe in rooms filled with chandeliers. His big, innocent eyes traveled across the hall, too bright for his world, too far from the street corners he came from. Whispers began to weave through the room like smoke. Who let him in? Is he lost? Whose houseboy is that? Some covered their mouths while laughing. Others pointed openly. A woman in a glittering gold dress tilted her head, pretending to pity him, but her eyes burned with mockery. Kenechi tried to look invisible. His stomach rumbled at the sight of steaming dishes placed on every table, jollof rice in gold-rimmed bowls, grilled tilapia, roasted chicken brushed with honey glaze, glasses of sparkling juice that caught the light like liquid diamonds. He pressed his lips together, praying silently that no one would notice him. But they did. The laughter grew louder. Somebody at the back chuckled, "This is the VIP table, not an orphanage." Kenechi clenched the small wooden carving in his pocket, the last thing his mother gave him before she died. It was the only thing that made him feel he belonged somewhere. Have you ever been in a room where people laughed at you, not because of what you did, but because of who they think you are? At that moment, as the laughter echoed like drums, the grand door of the banquet hall swung open. A hush fell across the room. Someone important had arrived. Before the chandeliers and golden plates, there was Ojalegba Bridge, hot, noisy, and full of horns that never slept. That was where Kenechi learned to count his steps by the rhythm of traffic and the promises of strangers. He woke to the hiss of Danfo buses and the smell of roasted corn. He washed his face with water scooped from a sachet and dried it with the air. He knew which shopkeepers might spare a leftover meat pie and which ones would chase him with a broom. He knew where the dogs were friendly and where they weren't. He learned to say "Good morning, sir" with a smile that hid hunger. He learned to make a coin feel like a blessing and a kind word feel like rain. At night, he slept behind a kiosk painted Pepsi blue, beside a stack of empty crates. Above him, the moon sometimes looked like the slice of an orange. On those nights, he took out the small wooden carving, a tiny bird with spread wings. His mother had pressed it into his hand on the day fever took her voice. "Fly," she had whispered. "Even if the sky forgets your name, fly." He didn't remember his father. He remembered only the lullaby his mother sang in Igbo, the way her hands smelled like shea butter, and the story she loved: "If the chick survives the rain, it will grow to crow at dawn." One afternoon, Kenechi met Mema Bisi, an old woman who sold oranges by the roadside. She tied her wrapper tight and watched him with eyes that had seen 1,000 Lagos afternoons. "Nah, this world can be loud," she said, slipping him 2 oranges. "But your destiny will speak louder." She never asked where he came from. She just told him to keep his hands clean, his words honest, and his heart soft, because a soft heart can bend and not break. Sometimes, when the traffic lights turned red, Kenechi would polish windshields for coins. Other times, he ran errands for the boys who pushed wheelbarrows of plantain. He saved the smallest money in a bottle cap in case tomorrow came empty. On Sundays, he stood at the back of a church with open doors and listened to choirs sing. He didn't know the verses, but he knew the feeling, like someone was calling his name from far away, promising that the road would not end on the road. He held the wooden bird tighter and believed it. The morning that changed everything didn't come with a trumpet. It came with wind and paper. Kenechi had just finished helping a pepper seller carry her basin to the other side of the road. As he wiped sweat from his forehead with the hem of his shirt, something fluttered across the street like a lost butterfly. It landed at his feet, a golden invitation card, thick and glossy, its edges trimmed with gold foil. He picked it up gently. The ink on the card glimmered in the sun. Annual Okoro Foundation Banquet, Eco Grand Hotel. 7 p.m. He didn't know what banquet meant. He just knew it sounded big. On the bottom of the card, in elegant writing, was, "All invited guests welcome at the main gate." He laughed to himself. What would a street boy do at a banquet? Yet something in his chest whispered, go. All day, he carried the card in his pocket like treasure. He didn't beg. He didn't wash windows. He just sat near Mama Beese's orange stand, staring at the card, imagining gold chandeliers and shiny floors. When night came, the Lagos sky wore its deep blue gown. Traffic lights blinked red and green like impatient eyes. Kenechi walked toward Eco Grand Hotel, heart thumping like a drum. When he reached the towering black gate with gold patterns, he froze. Security men in black suits scanned invitations. Expensive cars glided in, Rolls-Royces, G-Wagons, Bentleys. Women in sparkling gowns. Men in agbadas that whispered with pride. He could smell roasted chicken and hear faint music floating out. Boy! Where are you going? One of the guards barked when he saw Kenechi. Kenechi held up the card with trembling hands. The men exchanged confused looks. One of them raised his brow, clearly ready to push him away. But before he could, a kind waiter carrying trays of champagne walked by. Leave him, the waiter murmured. I'll handle it. And just like that, Kenechi slipped through the gate, into a world built for everyone but him. Have you ever walked into a place where your presence alone made others stare? Kenechi's story had just stepped into its storm. The air inside the banquet hall smelled like expensive perfume and roasted turkey. A soft jazz band played at the corner, their instruments glimmering under warm chandeliers. Kenechi stood at the entrance for a moment, frozen like a raindrop hanging from a leaf. Everywhere he turned, people shimmered. Gold necklaces. Polished shoes. Men in white agbadas with bold embroidery. Women in dresses that sparkled like Lagos lights at night. He clutched the invitation tighter, wishing he could shrink into it. A waiter passed by and gently pointed to a long, glowing VIP table in the center. Kenechi nodded slowly, moving toward it. He didn't know where to sit, so he quietly slipped into the last empty chair at the far end. The velvet chair almost swallowed his tiny frame. He stared at the mountain of food before him, jollof rice with grilled chicken, suya sticks, pepper soup, roasted plantain, fresh juice in crystal glasses. His eyes widened. It was more than he had ever seen in his life. Then came the whispers. Who is this boy? Where is his guardian? He doesn't belong here. Someone at the middle of the table laughed loudly, the kind of laughter that rolls across a room and tells others it's okay to mock too. Another voice, a woman in a shiny red gown, added, maybe he's here to wash the plates after the party. Laughter exploded around the table like firecrackers. Kenechi looked down at his hands. His heart pounded. His throat burned. His wooden bird was still in his pocket. He squeezed it tight, as if his mother's voice might rise out of the wood and shield him. The jazz band kept playing, but to him, the hall felt like a storm. Security will throw him out soon, someone whispered. But no one did. So the guests kept laughing. They laughed louder. Some covered their mouths, others pointed their forks at him like he was part of the entertainment. Have you ever been laughed at, not for what you did, but for simply being present where others thought you didn't belong? Little did they know, the boy they mocked was about to rewrite the story of that night. The laughter was still rolling like thunder when the grand oak doors at the far end of the hall swung open. The jazz band stumbled into silence. Even the waiters paused mid-step. In walked Chief Okoro, the billionaire whose name carried weight from Lagos Island to Abuja. Tall, broad shoulders, agbada embroidered with gold threads, his presence wrapped the room like a sudden storm. His wristwatch alone could buy the entire banquet menu. Guests immediately straightened in their seats. Those who were laughing seconds ago adjusted their faces, switching from mockery to admiration. A woman whispered, "He's here." Another quickly placed her napkin on her lap as if trying to look important. Chief Okoro didn't wave. He didn't smile. His eyes scanned the room with the sharpness of a man who had built empires. Then they landed on Kenechi. The boy, still gripping his wooden carving, lowered his gaze. He could feel the weight of the man's stare across the hall. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Chief Okoro began to walk. Not toward the stage. Not toward the guests waiting to greet him. But straight toward the VIP table, and the boy. The guests at the table froze. A few shifted nervously. The woman in the red gown whispered, "Oh no, he's going to throw him out." Step by step, Chief Okoro approached. His agbada flowed like a river of gold. His shoes tapped softly against the marble floor. Kenechi's small shoulders stiffened. Chief stopped beside him. The entire hall was silent now. Even the clinking of glasses died. All eyes watched, waiting to see the billionaire scold the street boy for daring to sit among the rich. But he didn't scold. He knelt slightly, his eyes narrowing at the wooden carving peeking out of the boy's hand. Something in his expression cracked, not anger. Recognition. The guests exchanged confused glances. Chief Okoro placed a steady hand on Kenechi's small shoulder. The same crowd that had mocked the boy now held their breath. The room held its breath. Chief Okoro stood tall beside Kenechi, his gold-embroidered agbada brushing lightly against the edge of the VIP table. Every eye in the hall was fixed on him. Even the air felt tight, like the world itself was waiting to hear his next words. The woman in the red gown shifted uncomfortably. One of the men at the table coughed into his napkin. A waiter froze mid-step, still holding a tray of puff-puff. Then, slowly, Chief Okoro reached down and lifted the small wooden carving from Kenechi's trembling hands. His own fingers shook as he stared at it. For a moment, he wasn't a billionaire anymore. He was a father looking at a piece of his lost past. This, he whispered, voice cracking like a dry twig. This carving. He turned to the guests, his voice rising like rolling thunder, this was my son's. Gasps scattered across the hall like dry leaves in the wind. A man dropped his fork. Someone at the far end murmured, his son? Chief Okoro looked at the boy again, his eyes glistening. 10 years ago, he said slowly, a fire took my wife and my little boy. We searched every street, every hospital, but he vanished. Kenechi's lips parted slightly, his breath shallow. He didn't understand everything, but something in his chest stirred. A memory he didn't even know he had, a lullaby, a warm hand, a bird carved out of wood. And you, the billionaire whispered, his voice steadying, you're sitting right where you belong. He turned sharply to the crowd, raising his voice, his presence filling the room. Why are you laughing at my son? The words hit like a wave. The same people who mocked now lowered their eyes. Someone swallowed hard. The woman in red clutched her purse and stared at the tablecloth as if it could hide her shame. Have you ever seen a moment where everything shifts, when a person the world mocked is suddenly seen for who they truly are? Chief Okoro placed his arm firmly around Kenechi's shoulders. The boy blinked through tears as warmth replaced humiliation. That night, the hall no longer saw an orphan. It saw the heir of Chief Okoro. The banquet hall had never been this quiet. The guests who once laughed now sat frozen in their velvet chairs, their eyes darting between Chief Okoro and the small boy by his side. No one dared to whisper. No one dared to move. Chief Okoro's grip on Kenechi's shoulder was steady, but his heart was racing like a drum in a storm. He crouched down so their eyes met, man and boy, father and son, two lives that had circled each other for years without knowing. Son, Chief whispered, voice trembling, where did you get this carving? Kenechi swallowed hard. My mama gave it to me, he said softly. Before she went to heaven. His voice cracked on the last word. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Chief Okoro's lips quivered. His late wife had made that carving for their baby boy the night before the fire. No two carvings were ever the same. He remembered the tiny curved wing on the bird's left side, imperfect but perfect to him. He straightened up, facing the guests. 10 years ago, he began, a market fire burned through Ajagunal. My wife died saving our son. But he disappeared before the fire died. We searched hospitals, churches, orphanages. I never stopped. The guests bowed their heads, shame hanging heavy in the air. Kenechi's eyes flickered with questions. He couldn't remember that night. But he remembered the lullaby. He remembered a woman's hand on his forehead. A scent of shea butter. A feeling of love he thought was gone forever. Chief Okoro turned to one of his assistants, who was already in tears. Call the family lawyer. Call the doctor. I want a DNA test. Now. Guests began to murmur, not in mockery this time, but in shock and awe. The woman in red covered her mouth, guilt painted across her face. What would you do if the one the world mocked turned out to be royalty? Chief Okoro knelt again, pulling the boy into his arms for the first time in 10 long years. Around them, the lights seemed to shine brighter. The same hall that had been filled with laughter now carried the weight of a miracle. The boy once mocked was now a son found. The test results came back within the hour. The doctor, dressed in a crisp white coat, walked into the banquet hall where the celebration had turned into quiet suspense. Chief Okoro rose to his feet, Kenechi's small hand wrapped tightly in his. The hall was still. Even the air conditioners seemed to hum more softly. The doctor nodded once, holding out the file. Chief, it's a match. 99.9%. A wave of gasps swept through the guests. Someone clapped a hand over their mouth. Others lowered their eyes, shame still hot on their faces. Kenechi didn't fully understand what 99.9% meant, but the way Chief Okoro's eyes filled with tears told him everything. The billionaire dropped to his knees and hugged the boy, this time not gently, but like a man who had found the missing part of his soul. "My son," Chief Okoro whispered against Kenechi's hair, "you're home now." The hall broke into a different kind of noise, applause, sniffles, some guests even weeping. The woman in the red gown stood slowly, walked toward the boy, and bowed slightly. I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaky. One by one, others followed. The same people who had laughed were now asking for forgiveness with lowered heads. Chief Okoro led Kenechi back to the VIP table. But this time, it wasn't a stranger sitting awkwardly. It was the rightful heir, the son of the man who owned the hall itself. They cleared a special chair at the center of the table and placed a gold-rimmed plate in front of him. The boy who once stared at the food with hunger now sat as a prince at a feast. The band started playing again, not the soft jazz from earlier but a joyous high-life tune that made the whole room come alive. Waiters served food, the chandelier lights danced, and people whispered stories of what they had just witnessed. Never mock a person because of where they are today. Tomorrow may reveal their true place at the table. Kenechi lifted his glass of juice. He didn't fully understand destiny, but he understood this. The seat they laughed at would never be laughed at again. Moral lesson: don't judge people by their appearance or current situation. Greatness often wears humble clothes first.